What's up, y'all, and welcome back to Hip Hop Urban Pop with another edition of our nostalgic time machine. Today, we're going to take a trip back to 2001 and a rundown of the year. These rundowns will include significant occurrences, not only socially, but in pop culture, the music scene, the movie scene, the celebrity world, top moments, and so much more. January 9th, Apple introduces the iTunes Media Player. January 12th, Save the Last Dance debuts at number 1 at the box office, earning $27.5 million with a budget of $13 million. The film went on to gross $91 million in the US and $131.7 million worldwide. January 17th, bass player Jason Newsted leaves Metallica after being with the band for 14 years. January 26th, a disaster breaks out after a crowd surge occurred during Limp Bizkit's set during the Big Day Out Music Festival in Sydney, Australia. As a result of this, 16-year-old Jessica McCulloch died of asphyxiation after being crushed in a mosh pit. Following this, the band fled the country after threats were made to their safety. February 1st, Jennifer Lopez becomes the first female artist to have both a #1 album, J-Lo, and a #1 movie at the box office, The Wedding Planner, in the same week. February 21st, the 43rd Annual Grammy Awards roll in and its nostalgia filled with presenters consisting of Heather Locklear and Kid Rock, Toni Braxton, Dolly Parton and Brad Paisley, Maya and Cisco, Erykah Badu, Stevie Wonder, Bette Midler, and more. The performers included Faith Hill, Macy Gray, Christina Aguilera, NSYNC, Eminem and Elton John, Madonna, Destiny's Child, and others. This very night, Destiny's Child performed at the Grammys for the very first time, and as a newly shuffled trio, they also took home the award for Best R&B Performance by a Group or Duo, and Best R&B Song with Say My Name. Other winners included Macy Gray for Best Female Pop Vocal, Sting for Best Male Pop Vocal, Dr. Dre for Producer of the Year, Non-Classical, Toni Braxton for Best Female R&B Vocal Performance with He Wasn't Man Enough for Me, D'Angelo for Best Male R&B Vocal Performance with Untitled, How Does It Feel, Sheryl Crow for Best Female Rock Vocal Performance with There Goes the Neighborhood, Live, Lenny Kravitz for Best Male Rock Vocal Performance, Eminem for Best Rap Album, The Marshall Mathers LP, Best Rap Solo Performance with The Real Slim Shady, and Best Rap Performance by a Duo or Group with Dr. Dre's Forget About Dre, and Beenie Man with the Best Reggae Album with Art and Life. February 28th. Courtney Love sues Vivendi Universal to get out of her contract on the grounds of the music industry. Contracts are unfairly long compared to contracts in other industries. March 1st, Canada's very first urban music radio station, Glow 93.5, makes its official debut on the airways. This was very monumental for aspiring Canadian hip-hop and R&B artists, since it gave them the avenue to be heard and a pathway to actually make it in music. March 6th, Katy Perry, then known as Katy Hudson, releases her debut album self-titled Katy Hudson. The album primarily consists of Christian rock and contemporary Christian music. Just before her album was released, the record label Katy was signed under, Red Hill Records, went bankrupt, which prevented any further marketing and promotion of the album, resulting in Katy's album selling 200 copies. Also on March 6th, Eve releases her sophomore album, Scorpion. Scorpion debuts at number 4 on the Billboard 200, selling 162,000 in its first week. The album features 2 singles, Who's That Girl, that peaked at number 47 on the Hot 100, and Let Me Blow Your Mind, that peaked at number 2 on the Hot 100, and was also number 1 in Belgium, Norway, Ireland, Switzerland, and the European Hot 100. The single also won a Grammy for the Best Rap Song Collaboration at the 2002 Grammy Awards, as well as the Best Female Video at the 2001 VMAs. Scorpion was also nominated for Best Rap Album at the 2002 Grammys and went on to sell over 1.5 million copies in the US. March 8th, Melanie C announces that she does not intend to work with the Spice Girls, cutting ties with the group just 3 years after former member Jerry Halliwell departed the group. At this time, the group denied that they are splitting up, even though they would not be active again until 2007. March 9th, Janet Jackson's single, All For You, breaks numerous airplay records, becoming the first song to be added to every station and 3 mainstream radio formats within the first week of its release. It was also the highest debut for a single not commercially available in the United States. March 13th, Janet Jackson is honored as the first ever MTV icon. This televised tribute became the highest rated show of the night. Performers that honored Janet that night included Maya, Usher, Pink, Destiny's Child, Outkast, Buck Cherry, NSYNC, and Macy Gray. March 14th. The court appeals and finds Michael Jackson not guilty of plagiarism, reversing a decision made in 1999 in which Italian songwriter Albano Corsi had claimed that Michael Jackson's Will You Be There was a copy of his song I Signi della Blacca. March 16th. Sean Puffy Combs, aka Diddy, is acquitted on all charges stemming from a December 1999 nightclub shooting in Manhattan that left both him and Jennifer Lopez behind bars. Even though Puffy was acquitted of these charges, the same cannot be said for his Bad Boy Records artist Shyne, who was convicted of 2 counts of assault as well as reckless endangerment and gun possession. Shyne was sentenced to 10 years in prison. He released an additional album in 2004 while behind bars, and when he was released in 2009, he was deported back to his homeland of Belize. March 20th. The third studio album titled Part 3 by 112 is released, debuting at number 2 on Billboard 200, selling 182,000 in its first week. The album features 2 top 10 hits, It's Over that peaked at number 6 and Peaches and Cream that peaked at number 4 on Billboard's Hot 100. The third single, Dance With Me, peaking at number 39. The album would go on to sell over 1 million copies in the US. March 26th. Gorillaz releases their first studio album. The album reached number 3 in the UK, but was unexpectedly a huge success in the States, selling over 7 million copies worldwide, and by 2007, earned the group an entry in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most successful virtual band. March 30th. Spy Kids was released in theaters, earning $26.5 million in its opening weekend. The film held the number 1 spot for 3 weeks, going on to gross $112.7 million in the United States and $147.9 million worldwide. March 31st. Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown are thrown out and banned from their Hollywood Bel Air hotel, both arrested and jailed after destroying the room. The property was allegedly badly damaged. According to the hotel workers, the walls and carpets were stained by alcohol, and the hotel closed down for 5 days just for repairs. April 3rd. Mariah Carey signs a blockbuster contract with Virgin Records worth $80 million for 4 albums. Also on April 3rd, Genuine releases his third studio album, The Life, which debuts at number 3 on the Billboard 200, selling 152,000 copies in its first week. One of the 4 singles on the album, titled Differences, peaked at number 4 on the Hot 100, selling 500,000 copies. The album itself went on to sell 1.38 million copies in the US. April 14th. Janet Jackson's single, All For You, peaks at number 1 on Billboard's Hot 100, staying there for 7 consecutive weeks and becoming the longest reigning number 1 hit of 2001. April 21st. The very first Chinese Music Awards ceremony is held. April 24th. Janet Jackson releases her 7th studio album, All For You, and it becomes her 5th album to debut at number 1, selling 605,000 copies within its first week. The album featured the additional number 1 song, Doesn't Really Matter, which was also featured on the Nutty Professor 2, The Clump soundtrack. The album went on to sell over 5 million copies worldwide. April 25th. Destiny's Child releases their 3rd studio album, Survivor, with their new lineup as a trio. The album debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, selling 663,000 in its first week. The album collected several awards, including a Lady of Soul Award for the Best R&B Soul Album of the Year, a Teen Choice Award for R&B Soul Album of the Year, an American Music Award for Favorite Pop Rock Album, and a Grammy for Best R&B Vocal by Duo or Group for the song Survivor. The album featured 4 singles: Survivor, which peaked at number 2 on Hot 100, Bootylicious, that peaked at number 1 on Hot 100, and as of 2023, it remains the last song by a girl group to reach number 1 on the Hot 100. The album will go on to become quadruple platinum, selling over 4.7 million copies in the US and over 10 million copies worldwide. April 28th. The second Coachella Arts and Music Festival takes place in California as a single-day event. The festival was headlined by Jane's Addiction, with the lineup including Weezer, The Roots, Gang Starr, Iggy Pop, The Orb, The Dandy Warhols, and Mos Def. May 8th. Beyoncé and Mekhi Phifer stars in MTV film Carmen, a Hip Opera. May 15th. Missy Elliott releases her 3rd studio album, Miss E, So Addictive. The album debuted at number 2 on Billboard 200, selling 250,000 in its first week. The lead single, Get Your Freak On, peaked at number 7 on the Hot 100, selling over 1 million copies. An additional 2 singles out of the 5 released would chart on the Hot 100, with 1 Minute Man featuring Trina and Ludacris peaking at number 15, and Take Away, a dedication to Aaliyah, peaking at number 45. The album also earned Missy 2 Grammy nominations: Best Rap Solo Performance with Get Your Freak On, and Best Female Rap Solo Performance with Scream, aka Itchin'. Missy, So Addictive would go on to sell over 1.7 million copies in the US. May 18th. Shrek hits theaters, pulling in $42.3 million in its opening weekend. Produced on a $60 million budget, Shrek will go on to gross $484.4 million worldwide, becoming the 4th highest grossing film of 2001. May 25th. Jessica Simpson releases her sophomore album, Irresistible, that debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200, selling 120,000 in its first week. The sales week was a step up from her debut album, Sweet Kisses, which sold 65,000 copies in its first week. Jessica decided to dive deeper into the Y2K pop and R&B wave and switched her image to align with her peers, Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears, to raise her status. The lead single, Irresistible, peaked at number 15 on the Hot 100. The single was described as overproduced, unoriginal, and a generic pop song by some, and a fun, up-tempo, sexy hit by others. Whether people love it or hated it, the numbers will hold the final say. The single would sell 450,000 copies in the US and an additional 35,000 in Australia. The album itself would go on to sell 755,000 copies in the United States and over 2 million copies worldwide. Lady Marmalade goes number 1 on Billboard's Hot 100. The single would be Christina Aguilera's 4th number 1, Lil' Kim, Maya's, and Pink's first number 1 record. The video also wins Video of the Year at the MTV VMAs. June 5th. Radiohead releases their 5th album, Amnesia. The album debuted at number 2 on Billboard 200, selling 231,000 in its first week, and going to sell over 2 million copies worldwide. On June 5th, Alicia Keys releases her debut album, Songs in A Minor, that landed at number 1 on Billboard 200, selling 236,000 copies in its first week. Alicia began writing songs in 1995, and she was just 14 years old. She recorded them in 1998 and submitted it to Columbia Records, which was the distributor for Jermaine Dupri's So So Def label that Alicia was signed to for a demo deal, but was rejected. Alicia would go on to sign with Clive Davis, later J Records, who actually bought her out of her contract with Columbia. The album was also previously titled Soul Stories in A Minor, but was changed due to concerns that it may limit the album to exposure to only Black radio stations. The album featured 4 singles. The lead single, Fallin', released in April, spent 34 weeks on the chart, peaking at number 1 on Hot 100. The single took home 3 Grammys in 2002 for the Song of the Year, Best R&B Song, and Best Female Vocal Performance. Songs in A Minor also took home the Grammy for Best R&B Album and Best New Artist, totaling 5 Grammys. The album would go on to be 7 times platinum in the US and over 12 million copies worldwide. Fun fact, and a known fact, despite the album being titled Songs in A Minor, the album only featured 2 songs in A Minor, Jane Doe and Mr. Man. June 9th. Madonna kicks off her first tour in 8 years, the Drowned World Tour, in Barcelona, Spain. The North American leg of the tour would begin on July 21st, spanning to September 15th. The North American leg of the tour would include 12 cities across New York, Florida, Georgia, California, Illinois, and DC, grossing over $76.7 million. June 12th. Blink-182 releases their 4th studio album, Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. The album debuted at number 1, selling 350,000 in its first week, and went on to sell over 14 million copies worldwide. June 15th. Atlantis: The Lost Empire hits theaters. Reporters speculated that the film would have a rough debut due to Shrek and Lara Croft being released around the same time. The film opened up at number 2 behind Lara Croft, earning $20.3 million at the box office. The very next week, it would drop to slot number 4 after Dr. Dolittle 2 and The Fast and Furious is released. June 19th. Luther Vandross released his 12th studio album titled Luther Vandross. Debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200, selling 136,000 copies on its first week, going on to sell over 1.2 million copies in the US. Mandy Moore releases her sophomore album, Mandy Moore. They debuted at number 35 on the Billboard 200. The singles from this album failed to chart on the Hot 100, and album sales were slow in the US. The album had moderate success internationally and has sold 462,000 copies in the United States. Ray J releases his sophomore album, This Ain't a Game, that both debuted and peaked at number 21 on the Billboard 200, selling a whopping 18.2 thousand copies in its first week. The single, Wait a Minute, featuring Lil' Kim, managed to peak at number 30 on the Hot 100. June 22nd, Dr. Dolittle 2 opens up at number 2 at the box office, earning $25 million. This film would be the last in the franchise to feature Raven-Symoné as Charisse Doolittle. It's also the last film before Kyla Pratt assumes the leading role. Dr. Dolittle will go on to gross over $112.9 million and $176.1 million worldwide. July 2nd. Napster shuts down its entire network in order to comply with court conjunction, ordering it to halt all trade of copyrighted files. July 3rd, Lil Romeo releases his debut album, Little Romeo, landing at number 6, also peaking there on Billboard 200, selling 99,000 copies in its first week. The album's lead single, My Baby, peaked at number 3 on Hot 100, number 1 on Hot Rap Singles, and number 1 on the Hot R&B and Hip Hop Singles. This song still is Romeo's biggest single to date. The album itself went on to sell over 500,000 copies in the US. July 4th, Scary Movie 2 hits the theaters on Independence Day. The film is a sequel to the original supernatural parody film, written by and also starring Sean and Marlon Wayans, and directed by Keenen Ivory Wayans. With a budget of $45 million, Scary Movie 2 opened the weekend with $20.5 million. The film would go on to gross $71.3 million in the US and $141.2 million worldwide. This film is number 2 in the franchise of 5 films, but this one is the last film to feature Sean, Marlon, and Keenen. After the Wayans tried to negotiate terms in their contract for the third movie with Harvey Weinstein and his brother, whom produced the franchise via Miramax Films, they were bluntly denied. The Wayans mentioned in an interview that the Weinsteins were not the best or kindest people to do business with, and that they're very much an evil regime. They do what they want to do, how they do it, and it can be very rude and quite disrespectful. Marlon was on Christmas vacation when he found out that he had been dropped from the franchise and read that they would be moving forward with someone else. And just like that, Sean and Marlon were no longer starring in the film, which they co-wrote and helped to develop. July 7th, Janet Jackson launches her All For You tour, with the first sitting being Portland, Oregon. The opening acts of the tour consisted of 112 for the first leg and Genuine for the second leg. Multiple shows from this tour were either postponed or canceled following the 9/11 attacks, and the tour would go on to gross $44.7 million in sales by the end of the year. July 9th, the Backstreet Boys put their Black and Blue tour on hold to allow fellow member AJ McClain to enter a rehabilitation center to deal with his alcoholism and depression. Also on July 9th, Usher releases his third studio album, 8701, that debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200, selling 210,000 copies in its first week. The album was originally set to be released in October of 2000, and it was originally titled All About You, but the album was delayed countless times following the leak of several tracks on Napster. Usher had to record new tracks under the new title, which we know today as 8701. The title derives from the first time Usher sang in his local church in 1987 and the release year of the album, 2001. The lead single, You Remind Me, peaked at number 1 on the Hot 100 and won Usher his first Grammy for the Best Male R&B Vocal Performance in 2002. Fun fact, the video features lookalikes of the singers Maya, Brandy, and Tamia, to showcase women that reminded him of his past relationship, while featuring Chili of TLC, who he began dating earlier that year. The second single, You Got It Bad, also peaked at number 1 on Hot 100, while the third single, You Don't Have to Call, peaked at number 3. The album went on to become 4 times platinum, selling 4 million copies in the US and over 8 million copies worldwide. July 10th, pop boy band Dream Street releases their debut album, self-titled Dream Street. The group would end up disbanding the very next year after the parents of the group members filed a lawsuit against producers and founders Louis Baldinieri and Brian Luco for allegedly exposing the then underage lead boys to booze, women, and pornography. By 2002, the courts ruled in favor of the parents, thus releasing the boys from their contracts. Also prior to this lawsuit, band members Jesse McCartney would embark on a solo career that made him the breakout star of the group, appearing in TV shows and films like Hannah Montana, The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, Summerland, Young Justice, and Alvin and the Chipmunks. Jesse also released his debut album, Beautiful Soul, in 2004 that also went platinum. July 13th. Legally Blonde hits theaters, grossing $20 million in its opening weekend. The film went on to gross $96.5 million in the US and $141.7 million worldwide. July 16th. Mariah Carey releases her lead single, Loverboy, off her 8th studio album, Glitter, which also dubbed as a soundtrack of the film Glitter that she starred in. The song will go on to be the best-selling song of 2001 with 571,000 units sold after peaking at number 1 on Billboard's Hot Singles chart for 4 consecutive weeks. And even with little to no airplay, the song managed to peak at number 2 on Billboard's Hot 100, right behind Destiny's Child, Bootylicious. With all that success, it's almost inconceivable that the song was sabotaged and given little promotion. In fact, many people wrote this entire year off as Mariah's flop year, even though it easily outperformed many of her counterparts then and now. It all started in 2000 when Mariah was writing and recording material for the album Glitter. During this time, she came up with the concept for the lead single, Loverboy, which originally contained a sample of the melody and hook of the 1978 song Firecracker by Yellow Magic Orchestra. The original version of Loverboy was even featured in early theatrical trailers of the film Glitter. Around this time, Mariah ended her contract with Columbia Records, and Jennifer Lopez was newly signed to Columbia Records by Tommy Mottola. Jennifer then quickly began recording material for her 2001 album J-Lo, and according to Irv Gotti, Mottola, head of Columbia Records, and Mariah's ex-husband, called him up after discovering Mariah's plans to use Firecracker sample and attempted to have Jennifer use it before her as a sabotage for her film and album. This left Mariah distressed and paranoid about any other executives being informed about her album. The music publishers for Firecracker even admitted Mariah had licensed the song first and that Jennifer's team came in and signed for it a month later under Mottola's instruction. Now, since Jennifer's album was going to be released before Mariah's, J-Lo being released on January 16th of 2001, and Mariah's originally to be released in late 2001, Mariah was forced to restructure her song. She ended up changing the sample to Cameo's Candy, commencing the birth of the Loverboy we know today. While Jennifer's song that used the Firecracker sample titled I'm Real would be released as a single on June 19th of 2001. Many people today say that they truly prefer the Cameo version of the song, and it did go on to be the best-selling single of 2001. But the shenanigans did not end there for Mariah. The new and improved single Loverboy, originally supposed to be released at a later date in 2001, but Loverboy was leaked to the radio on June 1st of 2001, and as a result of this, her label, Virgin Records, had to push her rollout up to an earlier date to restrain the leak. Mariah embarked on a promotional campaign for the single that would be, unfortunately, short-lived. She was scheduled to do a day of radio interviews, but after calling in an hour late to Q100 in Atlanta, the schedule was thrown off and the rest of the interviews for the day were canceled. Then the next day, Mariah made a surprise appearance on TRL, pushing an ice cream cart out to the filming stage wearing a large men's t-shirt. Mariah then began handing out ice cream bars to the audience and waving at the fans in Times Square. She then walks over to TRL's host, Carson Daly, and begins a striptease to reveal a tight yellow and green ensemble underneath. Carson then says that Mariah Carey has lost her mind. This event garnered immense media attention, and many critics labeled her as disturbed and erratic. Mariah later revealed that Carson knew of her appearance, and he was supposed to act surprised to add a dramatic effect for the show, but he did the opposite and said she lost her mind on air. Following this, at a single signing at Tower Records, Mariah went off on radio host Howard Stern and how his humor bothered her. Her publicist abruptly grabbed the mic and orders the cameras to stop filming. A few days after this, it was reported that Mariah was leaving irregular messages and voice notes on her website, which was later removed by her manager. Now, the messages didn't really seem irregular or erratic. They were just Mariah updating her fans, thanking them and sharing things happening in her life. similar to what's done on social media today. Mariah then left the message saying, quote, "I'm trying to understand things in life right now, so I don't really feel that I should be doing music right now. What I'd like to do is just take a little break or at least get one night of sleep without someone popping up about a video. All I really want to do is just be me, and that's what I should have done in the first place. I don't say this much, but guess what? I don't take care of myself." Following this, her manager removed all her messages and voice notes saying Mariah was obviously exhausted and not thinking clearly. And on July 26th, Mariah was suddenly hospitalized for extreme exhaustion and a physical and emotional breakdown. After this, Virgin Records pushed back her album and film titled Glitter 3 weeks from August 21st and September 11th to August 31st and September 21st. The album was released on August 18th, 2001, selling 116,000 in its first week and debuting at number 7 on Billboard 200. Although the album ended up selling 666,000 copies in the United States, it sold over 2 million worldwide. The movie bearing the same name would suffer an unfortunate fate as the film garnered $5.3 million at the box office after having a budget of $22 million. Mariah would even go on to say in 2002, the film, she referred to it as the film since it shall not be named, started out as a concept with substance, but it ended up being geared to 10-year-olds and it lost all of its grit. I kind of got in over my head. And in 2013, during an appearance on Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen, Mariah said she considers Glitter to be the biggest regret of her career, calling it a kitsch moment in history, the history of her life. She also stated that the film wreaked havoc on her career, saying it was a horrible couple of years after the film's release, and then I had to get my momentum back for people to let it go.